This is Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur with your host, Lynn Freest. Lynn will share ideas and expert advice from people that are walking in your shoes and living their encore careers, where they want and at the pace they want. You'll start a company of one with confidence and knowledge to live a fulfilled life of freedom and ease. Lynn is a coach and leadership consultant whose mission is to show senior leaders and experts how to start something refreshing and new after a full career in the corporate environment.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur. Thanks for listening. With an encore career, you can be creating value in the world beyond just winning that next pickleball game. You can work when you want, where you want, and you can do the work you love. You can live your dream. And if you're ready to get started today, please contact me at lynn@lynnfreest.com. Thanks. This is episode 192, and it's called The Second Billion. And it comes from an article I just read, 10 Steps to Longevity for the Second Billion. Are we ready? And it's by a woman with the Forbes, Avivah Wittenberg-Cox, I believe is her name. And information will be in the show notes. And the premise of the article is, the world currently counts 1 billion people over the age of 60, out of about 7 billion on the planet. By 2050, that number will double. So this article is kind of around the world needs to innovate now to be ready for the longevity challenges of this 2 billion people that we're going to be adding over the age of 60. When you think about it, right now, we lump everybody together over the age of 60. But I think moving forward, even in today's world, we don't think of people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s as all the same. Now we're going to have to say we can't just consider people in our 60s, 70s, or 80s in the same group. While there'll be many generations in the workplace, literally there could be 20 different decades in the workplace, with people in their 20s through people in their 90s in some cases. Now, this article talks to two experts from the UK, and they're both innovation centers around the area of longevity. And again, I've got their contact information in the show notes, so we'll share that with you. But one was Nick Palmarini, and the other one is Lynn Corner. And so I'll just be going over the notes that they shared of what are the 10 things that we need to be thinking as we go through. Now, an interesting piece that they added into this was they said, okay, before we get started with what we think, we're going to talk about ChatGPT. What is it going to tell us? And it came up with what they felt were interesting, but pretty much expected answers. So it's things like invest in research and development for age-related diseases, promote healthy aging and preventative measures, provide new technologies and assistive devices. So they said this was all well and good. We've been talking about these things for a long time now. And it's really, we need to go beyond that, at least in their eyes. So they started saying, these are good starting points. Here's some things they thought we should fundamentally look at differently than we ever have before. They called it the human 10 as opposed to the ChatGPT 10. So the first one was moving from what to how. Again, as they noted before, we've been talking about the what for forever now. So the next thing starts to be saying, how do we make innovation more systemic so we can get pace? Because really, we don't know what the future is going to look like. We can speculate, but we don't know. So how can we, again, intergenerationally as well as collaborate on innovation in a better way than we probably have in the past, so that we don't have what's one of the articles I read once said when a guy was helping Airbnb work on things, they wanted to make everything so it was mobile friendly. And yet they found most of their Airbnb hosts were people knowledgeable of technology, but they normally tended to use desktops. So they said, okay, so we can't always have things designed by 20-year-olds applying to everybody in the system. And the other thing is just having that as a go-to. How do we make design a default and not simply a separate discussion as we move forward? The second thing they talked about is we need to stop hunting for unicorns and what they called swimming with dolphins. And what they meant by this was, right now we tend to think, okay, what's the next big thing? What's the app? What's the thing that'll, whether it's Airbnb or something else, maybe a new app for aging kind of a thing. It's going to be different because they said, we have these things, but we need to fundamentally think about them as systems, and we need to think about them in a different way. Now, they talked about, as we gather people together on this, they think we should also be considering not just what's the return on investment, but what they call ROS, the return on society. How do we push together to see really a systemic look at putting some of these things together? And that follows into number 3, which is not focusing on products, but focusing on the supporting systems. Again, we all think about this will be the next great big thing, this, whether it's the Airbnb of aging or something like that. So we tend to think about products and as individuals. And you know what? We have to think about this as a system, because it's one of those things where we really have to dare to tackle the complexity. We like simple things. Okay, we got an app that solves my problem. Let's move on. Inherently, the second billion is going to be a chaotically interconnected system. So we have to be ready to support what are the right systems that are in place, not just the apps and stuff. Aging is a complex human trajectory. And quite frankly, the journey has many unknowns. So the other thing is, as opposed to an app or something, aging isn't something we're trying to cure or deny, but we have to start switching our perspective to how do we just work in this new arena with people that are living much longer and healthier longer. Number 4 they talk about is how do we get better at asking the questions? Because sometimes even the way we frame questions implies an answer. On the other hand, we also have to start co-creating solutions. So we have to get the people who are doing the aging working with the people who can help create new things and new ways to address it, so that we're co-creating and not creating something for one another. And some of this is just innovation, and it's getting the questions down to what's really the problem we're dealing with here. I saw an interesting article that said that Steve Jobs really didn't set out to create the iPod. What Steve Jobs wanted to do was carry around his U2 song collection all the time. Ended up with an iPod, which obviously we considered quite an innovation. Again, this whole idea of we have to ask better questions, because sometimes we ask our questions with the answer in mind. So especially as we look forward towards future behaviors, future things that people might be doing, just almost inherently, we're usually wrong, or at least we don't have the right target. So we just need to be listening as people experience this longevity and then go from there. We can't design what's going to happen for the next 50 years or the next 30 years right now, because we simply don't know. Item 5 was they said that you need to move from universal design to hyper-personalized experience. So again, it's a fancy way of thinking, but this whole idea of design mindset is true, and it should almost be a given that we have a design mindset. But sometimes we start again with things where we say seniors can't learn technology. A lot of them learned a lot of technology during the pandemic. So we really need to think about what are our prejudices and our assumptions about older people or about people with experiencing longevity, because that will inform the questions we ask, and they really suggest we need to get better about that. And then finally, in today's world, we customize everything. And with the technology and stuff, we can customize even more things. So we can order a car with all kinds of options on it. In the future, we're going to be able to customize things right down to our gene codes and things like that. So we have to think about, okay, as people age, as they have longevity, in today's world, we can allow for more customization, and it's not just one design fits everyone. Item number 6 they talked about is diversity to commonality. Again, the thing is, we tend to, as I put boxes around people. So whether it's older people or aging or any number of things. And sometimes, again, people will glorify somebody who's 100 years old and ran a marathon, or somebody who's 90 years old and is creating art or something. We sometimes tend to idolize or at least promote the people that are doing, I'll say, things that are really unusual. When in fact, again, there's going to be some common threads here. So it's not how different are we as we experience longevity, but how are we still all the same? There will be truly real diversity, and there'll be diversity within the people in that second billion, just as there is in everyday life. But we want people to become more visible, more powerful. Again, we want everybody to thrive. But we do have to get used to the fact that most of the people in this second billion, they're going to be wrinkled and gray-haired, and it's going to be the new normal. We won't all look like we're 20 or anything like that. It'll be different, and it'll just be the way life is. Another number 7 item was go from thinking of lifestyle and some of those, what they call exposures. And they really said we have to think of our whole life now. So right now, how well we do in the second half of life often has to do with things that happen in the first half. So they talk about things like lifestyle factors, whether it's education, financial status, social support. But then there's also the things of characteristics of physical environments. Do we have green spaces? Do we have air quality, noise pollution? What are the things that we've run into in our lives, and how can we moderate that or in some fashion shift it even in younger times of our life? The whole idea of whether it be obesity or all these kinds of things that often turn into age-related diseases can be modified, and we can challenge them earlier on. And the other thing, with all the computing power we're going to have, we can do a marvelous job of analyzing and accessing data, and it can be very personalized. Again, they like to come back to this idea. We focus away from being just dealing with illness to how do we get to a longevity type society. Number 8, they talk about, will there be 5 generations or only one, but will that be fluid? So it's going to be while there are differences, true differences as we age, on the other hand, there are going to be some things that are going to be quite the same. There will be people who face challenges early in life, as well as those who face challenges and physical challenges later in life. It'll be more, I think I've had another author talking about, it'll be more about necessarily stages than ages. So we have some people who they're going to devote themselves to child rearing for a while, and then they'll go back into the working world and devote themselves to a career. Sometimes it'll be a variety of things that go on. So it's one of those things where maybe in the past we've tried to define people as at 0 through 20, you're learning. At 20 through 60, you're earning. And at over 60, you're retiring. So it won't be that simple. And we just need to understand that not everybody will be in the same stage, nor even if they are the same age, kind of a thing. Number 9, then, is moving from just simply the untapped knowledge to what they call curated curiosity. So some of that comes to, we do have great amounts of untapped knowledge and wisdom. So again, with technology and intention, we can tap into what millions and technically billions of people know and can share with us. So we need to leverage that. But in addition to that, we need to really stay curious. Sometimes we focus on the answer. And with the case of longevity and changing our mindset to that, we just have to stay curious. What could be different? What could we do differently? How could it look differently? And it's going to look differently for everybody. But right now, in some cases, people are anticipating, well, because if you live longer, you're going to spend 30 or 40 years in poor health. That doesn't have to be true even today. And it probably certainly won't be true in the future. So we just need to, again, remain curious, because quite frankly, we won't know how it's going to unfold for us. But we do have to start, I think, moving from, in healthcare, we have a treat the sick culture towards being more proactively preventive, as the authors say. And their final item was this whole idea of just longevity. What are the innovations and changes we now would like, and how to put them in practice for that second billion? They say this innovation is important because that next billion is us. It's those people who today's are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. They actually are the next billion of people that'll be over 60 before long. So it's one of those things where if right now aging has got a particular picture in our mind, how do we see it as something that's really just another way of being inclusive and thriving in life? It'll just look a little differently, maybe between our 20s, 30s, and 40s, and our 70s, 80s, and 90s, we could still all be thriving. So finally, I really enjoyed this article, and quite frankly, it's really shifted some thinking for me to consider not just, how right now, Creating Your Encore Career is my podcast. So it's dealing with people who are in the here and now with respect to this. But this is an article that really helped me think about what's this going to look like going forward, because it's going to be interesting, to be quite frank about it. We're going to see things in a new and different way. What I'm trying to help people do right now will help set the stage for people that'll need to do these same kind of things moving forward in the future. So I'm really excited. And again, it gives me even a longer term vision than probably I had and I was expecting before. Great article. I highly recommend it, and there'll be a link to it in the show notes. So just wrapping up, with an Encore career, the rewards are great. You can be creating value in that world beyond just winning the next pickleball game. You can work when you want, where you want, and do the work you love. And if you're ready to get started today, please contact me at lynn@lynnfrias.com. Go over to my website, listen to a few of the podcasts, and get on the email list. We'll see you soon. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.